Good morning, my yogic travelers. Welcome to another session of Dharma Tributaries. I'm working on the Sufis this week. And before we even connect it to the Muslim tradition, let's expand it to understand the universality behind the particularization of their expression. Sufis are people who are interior searchers in pursuit of the real. And they recognize that the heart is instinctive in everybody, so it's really the love religion. Everybody understands heart before they're bent out of shape by society's pliers. So first they begin with the ultimate affirmation. La ilaha el ilahu. La ilaha el ilahu. Mohammedan Rasulallah. Mohammedan Rasulallah. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his prophet. That's one of their lines that gets you into the idea that first you give thanks to God or Spirit for everything, and you want to submit. You make yourself submit. It's willing submission. That's what Islam means. And of course, in the United States, we come from a culture that we hate to submit to anything, right? But the idea is not to have any compartment in your life that's religion. Your whole life is religion. Very, very similar to almost all the other psychotechnologies that you're embodying in the way you live, and not have just a separate aspect of your life that's more religious or more sacred or profanum outside the temple. Your whole life is in a certain way an offering, a devotional offering. Sounds like karma yoga, doesn't it? Sacrifice everything for me, says Krishna. So there are many ways that they get to do this. And of course, I like to use poetry as one way of sharing with you. And one of my favorites is The Guest House by Jalaluddin Rumi. As you know, he's one of my favorite mystical poets because he says it good. And what can I say? Let's share it with you because it's remembrance about emotions and what happens when you're practicing. The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as a visitor, unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still, treat each guest honorably. They may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. You know, one of the problems I see with so many people who practice yoga is they're making such an excellent effort to be a better human being. Not that they're born in sin and there's anything wrong with them, but in their expression, in how they're embedded in life, in how they enact what they really believe. Are they living their ideals and the struggle with that? And if you get a little bit of help along the way, your life is certainly in a better place than when you first began. Most people who practice yoga would admit that. But then what happens is that because your humanity is still subject to a spectrum of emotions, all of a sudden you feel like you've lost it when you get angry, or you get sad, or you get hurt, or you feel bad. Right? Or you're not living up to your ideal, and then this rankles you. And yesterday, remember, I said, how can we accept the fact that we have a divine inheritance, and yet at the same time we're flawed human beings? How do they both exist at the same time? Well, that's one of the things that makes us such an interesting species. You know, they say that angels are born on a certain level, and they can't evolve one way or the other. They're just fixed. But the human being has this fluidity. We can fall below our humanity to something that brings us closer to an animal instinct without self-reflection. And then there's also the part of us that soar above and go beyond what seems to be angelic behavior into what we might think of as saintliness or holiness, or at least a certain potential that we have that seems to be inexhaustible and unlimited in what we're capable of in terms of compassion, love, service, wisdom, and so forth. So don't get down on yourself just because you've been practicing for years or decades, and then all of a sudden somebody dies or a breakup happens in a relationship, or you get divorced, and all of a sudden you get depressed. It just shows you're a human being. It doesn't show you that you failed in what you're doing. It's allowing yourself to feel that really is a sign of strength, that just because you have moments where you're fragile, vulnerable, uncertain, right, don't feel like keeping up any cheerful face for people, you get pulled down into the doldrums, you feel anxious about the future, it just shows you're a normal human being. Keep the practices going. Now, sometimes it's hard to explain to everybody what the practices are all about because, in some way, you're supposed to intuitively grasp it, and even meeting your teacher is supposed to be an osmosis, a transmission that just happens in their presence. You get healed by the baraka or the magic, the juju, whatever you want to call it, the mojo that this person has, and not necessarily techniques, although they often do give you technique because the practice is what keep you afloat. And it reminds me of this really cool story about Mullah Nasruddin, the Sufi fool, who I like to go back to him and his stories. Once he was invited to a town to talk. So he came to the pulpit, he got up on the podium and said, "So, do you know what I'm going to talk about?" And everybody looked at each other. "We have no idea." He says, "Well, then you're too stupid for me to be here." And he walked away in a huff. Ooh, and the elder said, "Ooh, we must have really insulted him. Listen, let's bring him back again. This time, of course, we'll say, we do know what you're going to talk about, of course." So they brought him back the second time. He comes up onto the podium and he says, "Well, do you know what I'm going to talk about?" And they all say, "Oh, yes, definitely we know." He said, "Well, in that case, there's no need for me to say anything." And he goes, "Oh, my God." We insulted him again. Listen, this time we'll invite him back and this will say, "Some of us do know what you're going to talk about and some of us don't know what you're going to talk about." That'll do it. So they get him back. He gets up on the podium. "Well, do you know what I'm going to talk about?" And they say, "Well, some of us do and some of us don't." He says, "Well, those who do tell those who don't." So what can I say? I'm glad you're joining me for these sessions. And don't forget to go to GabrielHalpern.com, my website, subscribe to it, or just cherry pick all the stuff that I have there for free, or go to my YouTube station and see all the other stuff that's there to cherry pick. But of course, if you remember what I used to say about teacher training and yoga, well, the first things you learn in yoga are humility, devotion, and exit through the gift shop. So although I'm not charging anything, if any of you want to feel like you send a donation to me, hey, my Zelle account is 773-550-7906. Oh, snap. Is that terrible for me to do shameless marketing? No, everybody else does it, so I'm doing it too. GabrielHalpern.com or Gabriel Halpern YouTube, or go to my website, The Meister, and email me directly at The Meister, TheMeiste, @yahoo.com. Hope to see you soon. Have a great day.